if the best player in the world is not too good to be working on the fundamentals, then I certainly am not. And I make sure that in any area of my life that I'm trying to excel, whether it's being a keynote speaker or being the father of three, I constantly remind myself and get clarity on what are the basic building blocks to excellence in this specific domain, and how can I work relentlessly towards mastery of them during the unseen hours.
Hi, it's John Bernatovich, your host of the HR Like a Boss podcast. Welcome to Season 3. I've embarked on a journey to get to know amazingly awesome HR and business professionals with the hope of finding what it takes to do HR like a boss. If you like the show, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. On today's show, super excited to have a special guest, Alan Stein Jr. on the HR Like a Boss podcast. I met Alan through research I was doing on what it took to do amazingly awesome HR, and he did a really cool featured piece on Kobe Bryant that was showcased on YouTube, and he's got a ton of stories around basketball greats and high performers. So Alan, welcome to the HR Like a Boss podcast.
Oh, it's so awesome to be with you. I'm looking forward to a fun conversation.
First and foremost, would you mind giving me your perspective, Alan, on the purpose of human resources?
Well, with all of the work that I do, I absolutely adore the human resources space because I consider them both the glue and the gatekeepers to the culture of the organization. You know, it is ultimately their job to keep everybody else focused on the team's mission and core values, make sure that everyone feels safe and included and respected and valued and appreciated. You know, they're often the ones that kind of have to do the behind the scenes work during the unseen hours to keep the team performing at a high level. So I'm a huge fan and advocate of everybody that works in the HR space.
Do you mind telling me some of the stories you've seen or the impact or your general belief on this idea of small incremental changes and improvements can result in profound change?
For sure. Well, two come to mind immediately. One is that Kobe Bryant signature story that I tell almost every time I'm on stage. Was the first time I met him in 2007. I got to watch one of his really early morning workouts. And as a younger coach, I was surprised that he was doing such basic movements. I mean, he was really drilling down on the fundamentals of the game. And that surprised me. I mean, it was, my assertion that in 2007, he was the best player in the world. So I expected to see him doing some drills with some flash and some sizzle. And instead, he was just drilling down on the fundamentals. And when I asked him about it later that day at camp, his answer was very direct. And that is, the best never get bored with the basics. You know, that the best are always working towards mastery of the fundamentals of their specific craft during the unseen hours. And that really shifted my perspective because I left that interaction thinking, if the best player in the world is not too good to be working on the fundamentals, then I certainly am not. And I make sure that in any area of my life that I'm trying to excel, whether it's being a keynote speaker or being the father of three, I constantly remind myself and get clarity on what are the basic building blocks to excellence in this specific domain, and how can I work relentlessly towards mastery of them during the unseen hours. So this concept of always, sticking with the basics and working on the basics has been pivotal to my life's philosophy. Another one that I learned was when I had a chance to meet, at the time, my idol, Coach K, the former head basketball coach at Duke, someone I'd revered my entire coaching career. And I had a chance to meet him at one of our practices when I was working in the high school space. And I talked to him for 10 minutes. And in that 10-minute period, he made me feel like I was the most important person in that gym. I wasn't. The kid he was recruiting that day was the most important, but he made me feel like I was the most important. He had a warm smile and made great eye contact. He had great open body language, and he had a genuine and authentic curiosity and was asking me very sincere questions about my childhood, my past, my training philosophy, what I was doing with the team. He made me feel like I was the most important person in that gym. And, I was raised very old school. I was raised that when someone goes out of their way to do something nice for you, you handwrite them a thank you note. So I went home that night and I handwrote him a thank you note that basically said, Coach K, you have no idea how amazing it was to finally meet you. Thank you so much for your time. I'll always be rooting for you and Duke. And I figured that would be that. Well, crazy enough, 3 weeks later, I go to my mailbox and I actually get a note back from Coach K. I know those listening on the audio version can't see this, but if you're watching on video, you'll see that on the front of his stationery in his iconic handwriting, he just wrote me 3 sentences that ultimately changed my life again and my perspective on life. You know, he basically said, no, Alan, thank you for your time. I really enjoyed meeting you and love what you're doing with the team. Keep up the great work. And I think most people would agree that 3 sentences on the front of a stationery that probably took him 60 seconds to write. I think most people will agree that is a little thing, especially when you look over the course of our entire life. 60 seconds is absolutely a little thing. But I let folks know that this little thing had a profound impact on my life. You know, this little thing is the reason I wake up every day with an attitude of gratitude to tell as many people as I can, I appreciate you. Thank you. Job well done. This little thing is the reason that I am personally relentless about returning voicemails, emails, and text messages. Because I figure if somebody of Coach K's stature can make the time to handwrite me a little thank you note, you better believe, John, I can call you back. You better believe I can respond to your email. So this little thing made a profound impact on my life. And that's the message that I want to resonate, you know, with your listeners and the folks in the HR space. The little things that you do to serve both the employer and employee can have a massive impact on them as individuals, but absolutely on the organizational culture and performance as well.
Where are you at in the scheme of how does sports prepare you for your life and business? And where are the correlations between the two? Because you were an athlete, you work with athletes, now you made this career shift into serving, I'll call it the corporate performance world. And I'm just so curious to get your perspective on if you see that parallel and what it means to you.
Oh, not only do I see that parallel, I've built my entire career on that parallel and do firmly believe that the life lessons that we can learn through sport have such high utility that they transcend not only business, but really every single area of our lives. I mean, it's the primary reason that I encourage my own 3 children to participate in sports. I mean, I don't have, you know, these visions of grandeur that my 3 children are going to be professional athletes. And I'm not even putting any pressure on them to be collegiate athletes. You know, if that's a goal that they have and something they want to pursue, I will support them and encourage them. But I want them to participate in sports so they can learn things like respect and accountability and personal responsibility and what it means to be a part of something bigger than yourself. And, you know, how do you become the type of teammate that you want to play with? You know, there's so many lessons. So I'm a huge advocate of sports, but I also recognize that there are many audiences that I speak with that don't have the same affinity or love for sport than I do. So I just kindly and casually remind them that, you know, the reason I use sports as my vehicle is because it was what I was very passionate about. And I know that each and every one of them have something they were very passionate about. So whether it was music or the arts or theater or graphic design or, you know, anything in between, these principles still have high enough utility that they apply. You know, if all 3 of my children who currently all play youth basketball, if they decided to stop playing basketball today, and one of them wanted to play the piano, one of them wanted to act in the school play, and one of them wanted to be an entrepreneur, I would be very supportive of all 3 of those endeavors. And I would tell them that the stuff I've been teaching and preaching and modeling for you isn't going to change, because what I was teaching you to be good at basketball are the exact same things I'm going to teach you to be good in the school play or as an entrepreneur or to play the piano. Things like repetition is not punishment. Repetition is the oldest and most effective form of learning and skill acquisition on the planet. So if you want to get good at anything, you need to get in repetitions. You know, mindset, the importance of your perspective on the world around you, the role your habits play in your performance and in your overall joy and fulfillment for life. So yes, while I can easily make the connection between sport and business, and that is a pillar of what I do, I make sure that I don't want to leave anyone out. And if there's ever anyone in my audiences that don't love sport as much as you and I do, I still make sure to connect the dots, that they realize the recipe and the blueprint is not going to change. These are fundamental principles that help us work towards being the best version of ourselves.
The book is called HR Like a Boss. The podcast is called HR Like a Boss. We've been talking about amazingly awesome HR. I'm so curious, what do you think it takes to do HR like a boss?
I think it takes self-awareness. I think it takes empathy and compassion. I think it takes pride in your ability to do a job that we've already established can be thankless at times. And I think most importantly, it takes a very high care factor. You need to care about your work. You need to care about your organization. You need to care about their core values and their mission and their vision. You need to care about the groups you serve, both employer and employee. You need to care about doing the best job that you're capable of. And if you can approach it with some of those pillars, then I have zero doubt that you'll be exceptionally awesome.
Great job. Thank you so much for being on the show. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it, especially for myself individually and our listeners.
Oh my goodness, it was all my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the HR Like a Boss podcast. If it resonates with you, please leave a rating or review, or better yet, subscribe and share with a friend. Until next time, let's continue to aspire to do amazingly awesome HR.